This is The Mint live on ZTN Prime, your sneak peek into the world of business, finance and economies. I'm Ibn Nabonde. We're coming to you from Zimbabwe's capital, Harare. Let's get started. Now, coming up, the outgoing EU ambassador to Zimbabwe, His Excellency Jobst von Kerkman, says Zim-EU trade is poised to hit $1 billion from just below 900 million United States dollars. And to sit down with him this morning, we take a look at an extract from that conversation. Zimbabwe is targeting 360 million kilograms of tobacco in the next season, building on a record-breaking year of volumes and earnings. But beyond the numbers, the focus is now on value addition and localized financing. Zim Papers, together with the Tobacco Industry Marketing Board and the Ministry of Agriculture, convened a high-level indaba in Harare to push for local processing and industrial growth. Zimbabwe is repositioning tourism at the center of its economic agenda after attracting 3 million visitors in 2024 and emerging as the sixth most visited destination in Africa. The country has launched a bold new tourism and hospitality policy. The policy sets a $10 billion tourism industry target by 2030. And of course, we get into a conversation on this very subject right here on The Mint. The Mint will be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Catch exclusive interviews every weekday for candid, exciting and thought-provoking conversations with your host, Erika Ndoro.
We talk about arts, we can talk about sports, we can even talk about politics, and sometimes we venture into a nice guitaristic play. The one story where you can't get out of your head. Wakatarisa munhu so Erika, like where you're sitting. Ndozongokona bata face so pasina munhu.
Wakasiya music yako yo afro chakuti ndo music manje yemuZimbabwe.
And I'm sure they're still saying the same thing now.
Yeah, so
Shona kana kuti Chindevere kana mumwe mutauri muno muZimbabwe ndiwe iwewe ndiwo rupawo rwako ndicho chidadiso chako.
Catch me, Erika Ndoro, right here on ZTN Prime every single Monday at 7 p.m. whilst we get exclusive.
Didn't graduate. I guess I blew it.
You couldn't advise him anything. He would just look at you and say, so who do you think you are?
We were just like really spoiled.
And then they just give me the receipt and I'd pay.
The guy walks in one day and then he says that he wants to make a movie.
He was blowing the money.
There was just like this habit that he had where as soon as he got money, it was gone.
I just didn't have the skills or the experience.
This money, I could see it disappear so fast.
You are watching The Mint as we come to you from Zimbabwe's capital, Harare. Now, as the curtain falls on the tenure of Ambassador Jobst von Kerkman, the outgoing head of delegation of the European Union in Zimbabwe, a significant chapter in the country's diplomatic engagement draws to a close. His 3-year mission has been marked by sustainable dialogue, developmental cooperation, and the deepening of ties between Zimbabwe and the European Union. The outgoing EU ambassador to Zimbabwe, His Excellency Jobst von Kerkman, says Zim-EU trade is poised to hit $1 billion from just below 900 million US dollars. I had to sit down with him earlier this morning. We take a look at an extract from the conversation.
often with your family, like in my case, and then you see new things. And I think then you start reflecting, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Right.
And over the time, you develop your own culture. And in each country, you take something. And in Zimbabwe, I could mention a lot, but one thing which has particularly influenced our family, in which we are using ourselves, is making a plan. The resilience of people. Something doesn't work, we would have before had the tendency to say, oh, it's not working. Here, you ask a Zimbabwean, would say, I make a plan. I make it work somehow. And I think that's a thing which has particularly influenced the culture of my family.
Okay.
Now, there are a lot of other things, the professionalism of the private sector, the enormous talent in the cultural areas, and so on. But if you ask about what it does to us, I think that is something I would like to outline.
Right. The EU remains one of Zimbabwe's key trading partners, with the recent figures showing notable two-way trade activity. Of course, when you look at the value of trade and investment between the EU and Zimbabwe, perhaps just getting into the 2024 figures, Zimbabwe exported goods worth 255 million euros to the EU and imported goods worth 538 million euros over that specific period. Which sectors are leading the charge in exports and imports, and how have trade patterns framed the engagement between the two countries?
Thanks for mentioning these figures. I think they are quite positive. I was just mentioning 3 years back, we were 30% down on these figures. Now we have over $880 million actually in total in trade figures. But why is that possible? Because the European Union and Zimbabwe have a trade agreement. It's the Economic Partnership Agreement. It allows any Zimbabwean company to export duty and tariff-free to the European Union. That is, in times where everybody talks about tariffs, it's something fantastic. Now, the other thing your figures reveal is Zimbabwe almost exports twice what they import from the EU. We are actually happy with that. So from the export side, we are the biggest buyer of horticulture products, with over 40%. And you can have blueberries, avocados, macadam, etc. We are a big buyer, by far the biggest buyer. In terms of imports, it's essentially machinery from the EU coming into the country. And I think that's a healthy way of doing trade. Now I could lean back and could say that's fantastic, but I must also say only 200 companies are enrolled in the export scheme. Couldn't it be more? Couldn't it be 300, 400, 500,000? I think it could. And I think for the years to come, that's probably something we should look into, to increase these figures, because we have such a good basis already.
Right. Beyond government-level engagements, much of the energy in EU-Zimbabwe relations has been channeled through business forums, trade fairs, and investor relations, as it were. Which initiatives or platforms during your time have proven most effective in enhancing EU-Zim trade relations?
Trade relations and I think economic relations at large. I think I would mention one first, which I didn't mention up to now, and that's the arrears clearance and debt resolution process. Because that sounds so technical. It's a process which has been put underway by His Excellency the President to basically eliminate the arrears and the debt. I think that is the single most important process, because it goes beyond finances. It goes into normalization of relations, working together, discussing openly. And that is not only applicable to the EU, but I think to any partner out there. Right. So I think that's the single most important process. Then between Zimbabwe and the EU, we had the partnership dialogue.
Right.
In November 2024. And that again was an example of that we are able to talk to each other in a very constructive way.
Right.
In a way where we don't hold back, we say what we have to say. We might disagree, we might laugh together, we might say, no, that's not like that, but that's how it should be. It should not be like two walls and nobody is really talking. And what I really liked about this dialogue, that it went into depth and it was open, sometimes emotional, and it's good like that.
Well, of course, that was the conversation that we had with the ambassador of the EU right here to Zimbabwe, of course, speaking at length on the bilateral relations that have existed between the two territories. Of note would be the Zim EU Business Forum that was had earlier on in the year that saw over 250 exhibitors participating. But of note is that over 60 EU exhibitors were a part and parcel of that very engagement. And of course, it was quite fascinating getting to be a part and parcel of the experience as we saw 16, of course, ambassadors coming through to the party, including, of course, Ambassador Kirkman coming through with the other 15, of course, EU delegation members engaging in conversation with Zimbabwean businesses, and of course 60 businesses that exhibited right at that particular event. And of note was the subject of collaborating in various areas. What you find at this particular point is that the EU is the biggest taker of horticultural products from Zimbabwe. When you look at the value of trade between Zimbabwe and the EU, it's currently valued at about 880 million United States dollars, and the bulk of that is in the area of horticulture. And so a good number of horticulture products that are manufactured or produced from Zimbabwe rather find their way into the European market. And the conversation at that Zim EU Business Forum was to see to it how there could be other possible areas of collaboration between the two territories. And of interest, of course, would be the country's mining sector, which has been a subject of much interest. When you look at the country's gold, Zimbabwe is Africa's 8th largest gold producer that has had its gold production going beyond 35 tons per annum, and in fact is Zimbabwe's largest foreign currency earner per annum of note. And also you've got interest where Zimbabwe's platinum group metals, what we do know is that Zimplats is committed to injecting about $2 billion over the space of a decade, and this should be year number 4, speaking to the vast platinum group metals that we've got in Zimbabwe. Of course, South Africa has the largest platinum group metal reserves, followed by Zimbabwe, and in third place you've got Russia. So that also could be an area of possible collaboration between Zimbabwe and the EU. Not forgetting the lithium resource, where Zimbabwe is the world's 6th largest lithium producer and home to the world's largest single lithium rock deposit. We have seen announced deals to the tune of over $2.5 billion US dollars, but the bulk of those have been coming from Chinese investors who have been, of course, exploring and, of course, mining for the lithium resource from Zimbabwe. And so the conversation at this particular point is that from a government perspective, there has been a thrust to find how Zimbabwe can also get into value addition where the lithium resource is concerned. And I remember during the EU Zim Business Forum, I tabled this before the 16 ambassadors to Zimbabwe from the EU to find out if there could be any possibilities of collaboration between the European Union and Zimbabwe. And of course, it remains to be seen whether there could be some possibilities. But of course, what we do know is that there were several B2B engagements that took place during that engagement between Zimbabwe and the European Union at the Business Forum, with indications of further engagements and further collaborations. Now we take a quick break. When the Mint returns, we take a look at what's happening in the tobacco sector. The Mint to Brad back. Don't go anywhere.
Harare. Tune into the beat.
Capitalk 100.4 FM, your source for news, business, sports, fashion, and more.
Experience the pulse of Harare's culture and lifestyle.
Capitalk 100.4 FM, Harare's top radio station.
Join the conversation with Zimbabwe's top personalities.
Subscribe now for fresh and infotainment content daily.
Capital 100.4 FM, Harare's heartbeat.
medical checkups, experiments, games,
The mixture is making bubbles and the bubbles have changed color. Our balloon has been fueled by carbon dioxide.
We have it all right here on Happy Sprouts. Catch us exclusively on ZTN Prime, DSTV channel 294.
They call me Racer X, or in this case, Racer J.
Put your seatbelt on.
Catch exclusive interviews every weekday for candid, exciting, and thought-provoking conversations with your host, Erika Ndoro.
We talk about arts, we can talk about sports, we can even talk about politics, and sometimes we venture into a nice guitaristic play.
The one story where you can't get out of your head. Karo mwana mnimambama mu studio. Wakatarisa munhu so Erika like where you are sitting. Ndozongokona bata face so pasina munhu.
Wakasiya music yako yo afro chakuti ndo music manje no yeMzimbabwe.
And I'm sure they're still saying the same thing now.
Yeah, so Shona kana kuti chindevere kana mumwe mutauri muno muZimbabwe ndiwe iwewe. Ndiwo rupawo rwako. Ndicho chidadiso chako.
Catch me, Erika Ndoro, right here on ZTN Prime every single Monday at 7 p.m. whilst we get exclusive.
You're watching The Mint as we come to you live from Zimbabwe's capital, Harare. Now, Zimbabwe is targeting 360 million kilograms of tobacco in the next season, building on a record-breaking year of volumes and earnings. But beyond the numbers, the focus is now on value addition and localized financing. Zim Papers, together with the Tobacco Industry Marketing Board and the Ministry of Agriculture, convened a high-level Indaba in Harare to push for local processing and industrial growth. Our business correspondent Melissa Chatikobo gives us more.
As of 1 August 2025, Zimbabwe farmers had sold 352 million kilograms of tobacco worth $1.17 billion United States dollars, a 53% rise in volume and a 48% jump in earnings compared to last season. But as the sector celebrates, stakeholders are focusing on long-term value and sustainability. At the Tobacco Indaba in Harare, organized by Zim Papers TIMB at the Ministry of Agriculture, farmers, merchants and policymakers met to tackle key issues and define a roadmap for 2025-2026 season. One major concern, side marketing. Farmers argue it's often driven by uncompetitive prices offered by contractors and propose allowing multiple contract arrangements to increase choice and fairness.
We propose that contracts be based on land size or hectareage or projected output volumes, thereby allowing farmers the flexibility to engage with multiple buyers offering more favorable terms.
With the new 360 million kg target in sight, the focus is also on localized financing, cost reduction, and domestic processing to maximize economic returns.
If you have achieved 351 million when the government had budgeted 300 million, it means you can do better than 351 million. So government is expecting a minimum of 360 million kilograms from the tobacco industry next year.
In 2025, the global cigarette market generated $872.8 billion United States dollars, with an expected annual growth rate of 2.39%. As Zimbabwe moves towards tobacco beneficiation, identifying and securing export markets will be crucial.
If you want any level of beneficiation beyond where we are today, you must think of engaging those governments to say, can you cede some of your market to us? You understand? That's the reality.
From sales flows to policy corridors, Zimbabwe's story is shifting, and if current plans succeed, the country's biggest export could finally become its biggest transformation tool. Reporting for ZTN Prime, I am Melissa Chatkobo in Harare.
Melissa, thank you for giving us that report. Now, let's explore other aspects around Zimbabwe's tobacco. Zimbabwe is, of course, Africa's largest tobacco producer and the world's 6th largest tobacco producer. But now, here is the matrix. You'll find out that while Zimbabwe has proven that it's got the resources where, of course, the farming of tobacco is concerned, there remains much work to be done where value addition is actually concerned. To paint perhaps a brighter picture of what I'm trying to relay, tobacco is, of course, a key ingredient in various other commodities. Of course, the key one being where, of course, the cigarettes are concerned. But there are shifting dynamics that you'll find within that very market. And it would be critical at this particular point to also invest where value addition is concerned. By means of an example, I will point to 2 countries, Ghana as well as Ivory Coast. These produce over 70% of the world's cocoa. But when it comes to actually the value of the chocolate industry, which is valued at about $1 billion per annum, you will find that these 2 countries only enjoy less than 5% of that particular value, and yet they produce over 70% of the raw materials that actually get into chocolate. And so what Ghana has now done is that Ghana has gone on to get investment through a joint venture arrangement with Chinese counterparts toward the value addition of that cocoa to see to it that Ghana actually gets to produce chocolate within Ghana. And in the process, it is expected that in the next 3 to 5 years, they should be able to move up the value chain and get to enjoy beyond the 2.5% that they have enjoyed where the chocolate market or the chocolate, of course, value chain is concerned. In that manner, it's high time that Zimbabwe graduates where the value chain of tobacco is concerned and see to it that we increase the value addition and Zimbabwe gets to get more value from the tobacco that it produces. Now, I had an earlier engagement with Patrick Devenish, who is the chairperson of the TIMB, and he made reference to the fact that there is a factory that's being set up which should be running perhaps in the next 3 years. But Zimbabwe has in the past not done well where timelines are concerned. So of course, it remains to be seen whether that actually translates to its physical equivalence and Zimbabwe gets to harvest from its tobacco. Time for us to take another breather. When we come back, we take a look at what's happening in the tourism sector. The Minute right back. Don't go anywhere.
Where music transcends boundaries, where rhythm and melody unite the hearts of people, comes a show that celebrates the power of music like never before. Get ready to dive into a sonic journey that will leave you mesmerized and yearning for more. Welcome to the captivating world of Z Vibes. Vibe to it, baby.
You're watching the Mint on ZTN Prime. Now, Zimbabwe is repositioning tourism at the center of its economic agenda. After attracting 3 million visitors in 2024 and emerging as the 6th most visited destination in Africa, the country has launched a bold new tourism and hospitality policy. Now, I attended the launch. Let's take a look. Today, President Emmerson Mnangagwa launched the country's tourism and hospitality industry policy, which is expected to carry Zimbabwe for the next 6 years between 2025 and 2030. Zimbabwe was placed 6th among Africa's most visited countries in 2024, recording 3 million arrivals, just behind Algeria, which took 5th spot with 3.5 million visitors. Now, the country is building on that momentum with a new policy that aims to cement tourism as a national economic driver.
The unveiling of this policy is, therefore, timely as it dovetails with our national development agenda. It also echoes the collective aspirations of the people of our great motherland, Zimbabwe, to establish, promote, and enjoy a prosperous and fulfilling quality of life.
The sector now contributes 12% to Zimbabwe's GDP. The new policy replaces the National Tourism Recovery and Growth Strategy, which ran from 2020 to 2025 and focuses on wider reforms, product diversity, and formalizing digital platforms.
I exhort the sector to remain guided by the primary goals outlined under this policy. These include utilization of innovative strategies to accelerate tourism and hospitality industry development.
The blueprint sets an ambitious $5 billion earnings target by 2030 from the $1.2 billion revenues registered in 2024 and outlines structural reforms to make Zimbabwe a top-tier destination both regionally and globally.
We had a target of reaching 5 billion tourism economy in 2025, but we've already surpassed that in 2024, and today we are challenging as the policy is from 2025 to 2030. We are challenging ourselves today to reach 10 billion tourism economy by 2030.
At the heart of the plan are 12 special tourism clusters aimed at unlocking regional potential and supported by projects such as new roads, airports, lodges, and a 10,000-seater cricket stadium in Victoria Falls.
We have stated 6 objectives. If you go through the 6 objectives, one of it is to improve our infrastructure, growth in infrastructure, and the other thing that has been mentioned, infrastructure in giving families what to do when they go to our places.
The policy also aligns with Zida's one-stop investment center, prioritizing public-private partnerships, special economic zones, and diaspora financing to increase capital inflows and reduce bureaucracy.
As government, we invest in the enablers. Enablers being obviously the environment for investment by the private sector, the road networks, the airlines, and other transportation facilitation mechanisms. The private sector, on the other hand, then they meet us halfway. They invest in the hotels. We have some hotels as well as government.
The policy further promotes green tourism, digital transformation, climate resilience, and skills development with a focus on inclusive growth and community ownership of tourism assets. Zimbabwe endeavors the attainment of a $10 billion tourism industry by 2030. This will require strict implementation by both private and public sector institutions. Iben Mabunda, reporting for ZTN Prime at the State House in Harare. Well, of course, that was a report from yesterday, and of course, that's a wrap on the Mint today. Follow us on our social media handles, the Zimpapers TV network, as well as at ZTN Prime. I'm Iben Mabunda, the money man. Let them do what they do, and we do what we do. We mean business. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.